Here we go. I will now call to order the study session meeting of July 1st, 2024. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person city council meetings in council chambers on the lower level of City Hall. Public access to tonight's meeting is also available on the city's YouTube channel online and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Leidy will be absent. Mayor Pro Tem Luke Maharamasa.
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Here. Councilmember Hadamil.
Here.
Councilmember Kondo.
Here.
Councilmember Roper will be absent. Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Thank you. We have 3 items for discussion tonight. I'm very excited about these topics. And the first one is flock safety cameras and use of drones overview. And we have Deputy Police Chief Randall Darlin, who will present this overview to council. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So tonight, we're going to talk about our flock safety solutions, as well as our use of drones. Maybe.
Isn't turned on.
It's a tech-averse
Where you
night.
see green, slide it on the left part of the pointer.
Colorado, there weren't many departments that had flock cameras installed, and it was like kind of a beginning kicking off process for us. We started that in July of 2022, and at that time, we started getting camera information from not just within the state of Colorado, but from all across the country, from jurisdictions that were utilizing flock within their jurisdictions. And what it did is really provided us with the with Flock. For the most part, that's what Flock is useful for, is that data sharing agreement. It provides an opportunity for all agencies and even private organizations to share that data with law enforcement so that we can utilize that information to be as efficient and effective in combating any type of criminal activity in the area. So when you look at this, it's really that scalable public safety solution. hits within the community, or even hits within Thornton, or nearby jurisdictions. It's really dependent on the officer's use of the system. But within North Glen, they're mandated to use our cameras and have our cameras up and operating. Within Thornton, there's quite a few cameras that aren't really all that close to the city. So they can choose the cameras that are closer, so they're not constantly getting alerts that they need to, that aren't even really applicable to them. But it's a setting that they can identify, right? So, we utilize the system really to develop leads, to identify vehicles, identify possible offenders, and we use it to identify individuals that have warrants for their arrest, attempt to locate on their vehicles, meaning they may have been involved in some type of processed in the different data staff information we provide, right? So the installation of the camera started in April of 2023, and I would say those 16 cameras, I don't think we ever got to 16. I think the most we ever got to was 14. But those cameras started being installed, and we got probably late summer of that 2023 years when we finally started to get those cameras all implemented and installed. And as you look at the data, we kind of ran the data from that late August date through April of this past year, April 30th of this year, to really give us a comparison of where we were. So when command staff looked at, where are we going to put these cameras, right? So we had these cameras, and we know we're gonna have 10, but we identified 16 locations throughout the city of where we wanted them so that we could use the data that's collected to, really hone in where we were gonna leave the cameras. We focused on high-volume traffic locations. We focused on primary ingress and egress to the city. We focused on, up on 120th Street. So that camera may still be a potential camera location, but the one at 104th entering, that is on CDOT property and it is on an entrance ramp to the highway. So if they stick with that rule, which we're trying to determine and we don't have confirmation yet, then we won't be able to put a camera there and we'll work to identify a second location for that camera. But these are the permanent locations. After data review, this will be the locations that we maintain cameras currently, and then any future. Implementation strategy was get those locations where you're going to see a lot of reads, because the more reads you have, the more chance you are going to have of getting hits on warrants, felonies, stolen vehicles. As you move through to the next slide, you can see the type of hits we role in that within the process, right? When you look at catalytic converter thefts, which I think is probably the largest area of decrease, that last number there of 2 is this year. But when you look at burglaries, for example, we're not seeing much of a reduction in burglaries across the board for this. 95 this time. Questions now?
We have lots of hands up already. Councilmember Burns, I'm pretty sure I saw your hand up first. Yeah,
Madam Mayor
I
Pro
was
Tem.
watching.
Hi, so just to circle back to what you were saying about CDOT and I-25. So what is their deal? Like, why would they not want those? Is it, because it seems like we're talking about weather, we're talking about that thing. Is there an underlying issue of why they wouldn't want them, or is it?
I think that and I can't speak for CDOT specifically, but I think that the weather restrictions on the poles is a liability issue. I think that's just their standard, that they put, a lot of signage on the highways, and I think they have a standard, and they want everything on the highway to meet a specific standard. So those are late details that are kind of being added in, and they want certain wind forces with some of these poles. That's kind of the information I'm getting. And I think that's kind of just consistent with what they have. They do a lot of signage on the highway, right? So I think that's just trying to meet the standards that they have for the other signage that they put on the highways. Whether or not they want ALPRs on their property leading to access and egress from the highway, that's a policy decision that I really can't speak to. I would hope that maybe as time goes, they'll be more receptive to that, or maybe they'll even think about that as they're developing their options as they move forward. I think that they're more than willing to do it for state police purposes, but doing it for municipals and jurisdictions throughout the state maybe a little bit of a different question, right? So it's a policy decision that I don't have a lot of information on. That was literally a notification maybe 3 weeks ago that kind of came back through the email chain, and then immediately I was like, hey, let's find out where we're at on this, and let's find out, but I have not gotten any feedback further on that.
I made a note to talk to Corey about this because CDOT has not been very responsive. And so if it is a matter of they're taking a stance policy-wise that they're not going to allow these cameras, I'd like to know what other options and be able to advise council that perhaps we could pursue something legislatively speaking, or go about it in a different way.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, there are cameras on I-25. I mean, we all pay the toll, so.
Yes, we do.
And they don't use the flock cameras in any other city.
To my knowledge, there are none on access egress ramps. That was their specific feedback, is we are going to prohibit access and egress ramps to interstate highways, right? So have I got research to say that there's no jurisdiction with one on an access or egress ramp? I don't. I just have their feedback from our 2 applications for permits.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's a great question, Councilmember Burns. I had the same question, why, and that doesn't make sense, so I'm
We'll
on board
follow
with-
up on it,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, because if we can pursue something legislative-wise, then we should do that. We still have hands up. Councilmember Kondo was next.
Thank
Councilmember
you,
iPad.
Mayor Pro Tem. So I'm curious, slide 12, where you have the different flavors of flock.
I can tell you that our number one camera, the one on 104th and Marketplace, westbound, that camera has our most hits for steals.
Stealing.
Yes,
Uh,
for motor vehicle thefts. So it is something we look at. It's not something that I necessarily included because it gets kind of mucky. It's not
Yep.
super clear. It's not like, but that particular one has a lot of hits for steals. The one on Fox Run Parkway has a lot of hits for steals. It's actually just west. It's on 112, just west of York, or just east of York, I'm sorry. No, it's just west of York. That's the Reed
Is my-
location.
My hypothesis is if you have people that are committing crimes like stealing from stores, maybe they are doing it using a stolen vehicle.
That's
So-
absolutely. Cameras. The Marketplace has put in 8 cameras of their own into every access and egress into the Marketplace, as well as Lowe's. Lowe's has another, I want to say 10 to 12 cameras, and Lowe's throughout the country has cameras, flock cameras in their systems, and we share data. They share their data with us. So both of those systems provide us immediate notifications if they get a stolen car coming into the place, into the venue. The Marketplace camera, prior to the actual implementation of Marketplace having cameras themselves, we also had a camera on Marketplace going into the Marketplace. We removed that camera when they put their cameras into place. And those were our top reads, was Marketplace westbound and Marketplace into the Marketplace.
And I would
It's
just,
really nice to know. So really net, we have actually more than 10. Just
video report that Jamie puts together, a PO in the police department, he often highlights when they provide a summary of incidents. They will say that the flock camera was used. So Marketplace has been highlighted several times over the course of these new reports as apprehending suspects that were involved in other crimes. So make that connection as well.
And one of the things I'd like to highlight with that too is it's not always just that we're able to apprehend the suspect, but when a vehicle comes into the Marketplace and it's reported stolen, we have had success where we have just recovered that vehicle and taken the opportunity for them to escape their steal. And when they notice that we find the vehicle in the location, you know, there's a strong chance that we can deter that crime from being committed, right? So it's one of the reasons that Flock benefits us. When a steal comes in and we get behind that car and we try to stop that car and it flees, we may not apprehend that individual, but even in our policy, we tell our officers how valuable that is to light that car up, try to stop it, have it flee, but not have it commit a crime in North Glen. Because we're not gonna pursue that car in all circumstances. Most we're not, right? Because it's gonna be a little bit too dangerous. But we did pursue the vehicle that was taken in a felony carjacking, right? Because it's a person's crime, it has a little bit more emphasis. But oftentimes we light these cars up, they flee. That is an immediate deterrence. That is us letting them know we know that car is stolen and we're gonna pursue it when we see it. And it can deter crime in and around the community as well.
We still have lots more questions. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. Mine was really just for clarification, so I'm just going to go back. You talked, in terms of the data here, we have the 16 million plus reads of plates, I guess. Plates that aren't like recognized by the system as a problem. I mean, are they stored somewhere? What happens to that information?
So the information is in the system and it can be, you can go back and gather information. So that's one of the ways that our detectives can get leads, because not every car that's involved in criminal activity is a stolen car or has an alert on it in any way, right? So when, let's say a burglary or a robbery occurs in a specific area, we can have our detectives and our officers go back and search who came through that intersection in a certain time frame, right? And now you've got a list of vehicles. So if you did have a description of a vehicle, hey, you know, this burglary occurred and there was a suspicious black SUV or sedan out there, there's parameters in the search parameters that we can utilize to identify potential suspect vehicles in that and give us leads to help us to identify maybe who was involved in that crime. So they're in there, but they're only stored for about a year. Actually, they're only stored for 30 days with a license plate. And then, so there's data, raw data as an overall data, like just, hey, it read the plate, right? And that's the 16 million some odd plates. The data itself is stored for 30 days. So we'll download that data and we'll keep it for 6 months to a year per our policy, and then it gets purged.
So if someone, I don't know, disappeared or something, and you knew their license plate number, you could search for that license plate number and see if it
We
came from
can.
the city? Okay,
And I'll give you an example of that as we move through the
okay,
process, yeah.
all right, thank you.
That's a great question. Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So this might be kind of a silly question, but does it do anything with expired tags?
No,
Okay, it doesn't.
it won't read it as expired or anything like that. It's just. Correct, per our policy, yes.
Okay.
And then it's purged. So
Okay.
that's the investigative side of things, right? No immediate hit, no immediate alert. However, if crime was committed in the area, we would have some data to go back and search through to gather additional information and intelligence on vehicles in the area, potential leads, potential identification of registered owners of vehicles, potential witnesses even.
And this kind of, the data piece gets back, it also ties into your second half of your presentation too, about the drones, but how much data are you guys getting and how do you store it? Where is it?
Well, 16 million reads, right? So,
Right.
but those reads are, so what we do is we just download an Excel file on a monthly basis.
Okay,
And that's the data. That's all it is. It's an Excel file. It's here's your read, here's your time, here's your date, here's the plate. It's all it tells us, right? So we can search that Excel file, and within 30 days we can search the actual video footage of the read, right? So once it's gone from Flock, so Flock stores everything for 30 days. After 30 days, they purge. We store critical information. So I won't have a photo of that vehicle any longer. I won't be able to search for make, model, color, other things. But for that first 30 days, I could.
of 16 million people.
Correct. Well, of 16 million reads, right? That's 16 million reads since, that's
Right.
over a whole long period of time, right? From almost 8 months, right?
Right.
So, and actually the 16 million reads. Yep.
A lot of data. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I was just interested in this like private-public partnership that Flock does. Is there any kind of way we can encourage other, like, I don't know, Washington Point to invest in something like this?
So, yeah, we're doing that now, right? So currently, part of the next slide, actually, we have Fox Run Parkway, And the homeowners association, it's the only homeowners association we have in North Glen, right? So that homeowners association is considering putting flock cameras in their homeowners association property. Aspen Apartments, one way in, one way out off of Malley, we're trying to get them to agree. 11801, we have some process with 11801. We're gonna work with them and actually request that they put cameras in and potentially restrict some access to and from the property so that you get more reads, because right now they have 3 entrance points in and out of the property. But if they restricted one and you put 2 cameras in, you're gonna get everybody that comes in and out of the property. And that's one of the areas we recover many, many stolen cars, so, you know, that would be a big advantage to us. But our, not only our business corridors, but apartment complexes that, you know, have had significant criminal activity, you know, we're outreaching to them, telling them that this exists, and then it's really a financial decision for them as to whether or not they want to engage in it. Because it's not expensive, but it's not inexpensive, right? Flock currently is charging $3,000 per year per camera. So if something like, you know, like Fox Run wants to put 2 cameras in, which would really cover most of their complex, right? It would cost them $6,000 a year essentially to install them and maintain that agreement. Same with the, you know, our more troubled apartment complexes as well as our business corridors.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, is there something that we could do from like a business development standpoint, for like grants that we could give businesses to encourage this? But
That,
Is
isn't that
Nora-
a topic I
Nora's talking
requested?
about that, yeah.
Yes.
Well, is Nura talking about it currently, Mayor Pro Tem?
Not currently.
I believe it's an idea on the Padlet, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is a request I think I put in a while ago, so I know it's on the agenda. Maybe we'll see it tonight. Is it on the future agendas? Why don't we wait until we get to that?
No, it's not. Well, ring cameras is an item on the future agenda, ring camera research, but specifically a grant program for businesses for flock cameras. I thought Nura was looking at that, Allison was, so,
have our
I mean, it
Nura
could be
meeting.
something that if council wants us to look into that, we can, that can be part of tonight's discussion.
Okay. Nura has their meeting next week, and I thought part of the discussion was grants as well for ring or flock cameras, just cameras in general, but we can get back to that at the end?
Yeah.
Okay. Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. Councilmember Nowicki, do you have a follow-up?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Just one more question here. So with regard to, you guys contract with Flock Safety Solutions?
Correct.
Okay, and it's like a subscription service,
It is.
basically, right? So you pay in. Do they do anything else with the data? Or do they?
So it reads the plate. It doesn't tell us anything about the driver or the occupant or the registered owner, other than potential warrants for that individual or for the vehicle, hits for the vehicle. So if a warrant is put out for a specific individual and they have a vehicle registered to them, all right, when that warrant is entered into CCCIC, it will get attached to the vehicle registration. So when the plate reads, it'll connect the warrant to the plate, right? Doesn't mean that that's the operator of the vehicle. Many times we could see a vehicle that says, hey, this warrant, felony warrant for the registered owner of the vehicle. We attempt to stop the vehicle, or we can identify that it's a female driving the vehicle and the registered owner is a male. We don't even need to make that stop, right? Or we can quickly identify that that's not the individual, right? 'Cause you can't always tell what the individual is, or if it's gonna be the registered owner. You don't know until you stop them, especially at night, right? May not. But it's not giving us information on the actual registered owner of the vehicle unless there's a hit on that individual, whether that individual has a warrant whether that individual is a person of interest in something that we're looking for them, whether that individual is potentially on a terrorist watch list, something along those lines, right? And then the vehicle itself is tied to a stolen car or tied to, seeking to identify this vehicle, who's driving this vehicle, because we have plate information used in a crime somewhere else. So it doesn't necessarily tie to a person, it ties to the vehicle.
Gotcha. I guess just in this era of big data, I wonder if they just press delete after, 30 days.
Well, we have state statutes on how long we can keep the data, and we've got to get rid of the data in that time frame. And we have our policy short of even the state statutes, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I think most of the questions I had were answered, but maybe you can provide a little bit more information on the business corridor. So you mentioned Lowe's, the Marketplace, and some of the apartments, potentially Washington Point. Are there any others that are in the works or any others that have them set up at this point?
So there's nobody else that has them.
Nobody else.
Currently Lowe's, Hatensky, which is the
Right.
marketplace. We have had significant discussions with Fox Run, with the HOA. We've had significant discussions with Aspen. We've had discussions with 11801. And we've shared the information with all of the property managers for our apartments throughout the city. But we've had one-on-one conversations with those particular units because they're more troubled locations. So our community relations officers kind of reach out to them on a semi-regular basis, saying, hey, this is still an option, kind of a thing, as we progress through.
That's great. I would love to see more outreach in that, and I know it's happening, so that's wonderful. I did have a question in terms of the data sharing, because you said it was optional to share. So besides Thornton, who else do we share with?
Everyone in Colorado.
Everyone in Colorado, all
And
those
most
55 cities?
most across the
That's
state.
amazing.
I mean, most across the United States. Police departments pretty much share with all other police departments. I mean, that's generally the practice, right? So, I mean, we're sharing with agencies in Illinois, Indiana, New York, Florida, Georgia, all up and down the East Coast, all up and down California. Wherever Flock is servicing, that jurisdiction has the ability to share cameras with everyone. And for the most part, law enforcement agencies share data. And now we don't have all of their data as far as reads and everything else. But what we do have is that 30-day window by which we can say, okay, was this car found in your jurisdiction in a 30-day window? Here's that 30 days. Was this car here? Was this car here? Where did it read? We can run the license plate and it'll just tell us everywhere it's read in the last 30 days. And that could mean the East Coast, the West Coast, South, North, anywhere.
That's incredible. I mean, if you think of an Amber Alert, which can often cross state lines
For
pretty
sure.
quickly. Yeah, great technology.
Yep.
I don't see any more hands, so we'll let you get on with the presentation.
So on the crime data side, this was just some more information on motor vehicle thefts and recoveries. Whoops, I think I jumped a screen there, sorry. Motor vehicle thefts and recoveries. You can see that the motor vehicle thefts have gone down significantly, 318, 353, 255, 183. That's motor vehicle thefts just dropping throughout the Colorado metro area. And part of that is due to significant investigations that were done by CMAT, along with added technology that, many jurisdictions, right now I can tell you Thornton has cameras, Erie has cameras, Boulder has cameras, Boulder Sheriff's has cameras, Commerce City has cameras, Brighton has cameras. Many of our local jurisdictions have jumped into Flock and are using the system. When you look at recovered stolen vehicles, you see a significant decrease in recovered stolen vehicles, but I'd like to tie that also to the fact that you see there were half the number of vehicles stolen during that same time frame. So when you see a recovery of 59, it doesn't mean that we're not recovering vehicles with the system. It's just that many fewer vehicles are being stolen across the time frame. And then arrests by number, you can see those have stayed very flat, which is actually an indication when you start cutting vehicle thefts in half, but your arrests are flat, meaning they're staying consistent, then that is the tool actually working to help us identify motor vehicle thefts in progress and able to identify suspects to arrest. And then this is what I wanted to talk about was I kind of said, hey, I've got an example for you, future right. we had the kidnapping in our own jurisdiction about 5-6 months ago. And the suspects, basically tossed the baby out of the car in a car seat in one of our communities, right? One of our residential areas, right? That vehicle was immediately pushed out to other jurisdictions who immediately, and this is something that the system is capable of, it doesn't have to be a CCIC hit, meaning it's in the state recorded database as a car that's been identified in this, that, or the other thing, and it needs to be read, right? Individual officers can create a list right in their vehicle or right on their app. If a crime was committed like that particular carjacking, it wasn't truly a carjacking, right? They walked away from the car, they left their child in the car, somebody jumped in the car, drove off with the child. Our officers were able to respond to that, obtain the license plate of that vehicle based on the victim information, put that information out to all local jurisdictions. Officers were able to enter that information into Flock in our jurisdiction and in Thornton. That plate read in Thornton within minutes. Officers were able to get behind that vehicle and stay with that car long enough to make that arrest within an hour of the actual child abduction and abandonment of the child. The technical tools within the system are kind of broad, and you can use it in a myriad of ways, but that's one example of a real success story where we were able to make that arrest very quickly. So our officers routinely will identify a plate that they know was used in something if they haven't, or even a partial plate, and they can put it into the system to see, okay, let's see, where do we get reads, or if we get a read, can we identify? And we've worked with Thornton significantly on different locations where we'll identify a vehicle coming in, it hits on our license plate readers, we'll coordinate with Thornton because they have some different resources than we do based on staffing. They have covert vehicles, and they'll be able to follow that car, land it, and make an arrest. And I can think of minimum 10 to 15 times where that's been successful. So it is a tool that has had significant success within the jurisdiction and significant success at making some effects on criminal conduct in the community. So overall, we're excited about the process. And right now, we didn't put any additional budget requests for additional cameras in this upcoming budget. But like I said, this is the first chance we've really had to really assess it. And we'll assess it as we move forward and then decide, whether or not we want to, 1, move cameras because they're not as effective as we'd like, or 2, add cameras to the community. And then we'll jump into drone operations. Any questions on Flock before we move on to drone?
I don't see any other hands.
All right. So for drones are just a camera system that's kind of attached to an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's really all it is, right? And we treat drone video as evidence. So we take all evidence, all drone recordings, they're uploaded to our web-based evidence system, and they're considered criminal justice records. So they'd be available for review as would a normal criminal justice record. So not in every circumstance, but in circumstances where it's available, that evidence would be available, right? Our employees that are authorized to use our drones, they must successfully complete an approved course of instruction prior to flight. Currently, we have 4 certified drone operators and 5 that are working to get certified to operate the drones as well. We wanna expand the team to the point where we can have a drone available at any time, any hour of the day, across all the watches. Now, when you look at the operations of drones, any government agency can run a drone, right? So there are rules under the FAA where law enforcement agencies can operate a drone. They have certain restrictions on size, limitations, flight, how high they can fly, what they can do with them, but there's basically any law enforcement agency can do it. So under the FAA rules, we primarily operate under Rule 107, and that's just that operation of drones are under 55 pounds, we don't fly them over 400 feet high, and we keep a visual line of sight on that drone at all times. There's a secondary rule we can fly under, which we may engage in the future. It's a newer rule, and that's under a COA authorization, a certificate of waiver of authorization. And that would allow officers that are not certified, but have been trained on the operation of the drone, but aren't certified FAA, under the FAA rules, to operate under another officer's license, and we just have to report on those flights. We have to specifically report, when was the flight, where was the flight, why was the flight, what were we doing with the flight? So there may be opportunity for that in the future. Currently, we're working to just get everybody certified, right? But it is an FAA exam, and it's not easy. We've had officers go through the training and come back unsuccessful on the FAA flight exam. So we're working on both options as we move forward in the future. So it is a technical, difficult process to get them certified. So we'll work on both processes. If we can get them all certified, that's our plan. But if we can't, and we still think we need more additional officers that are operation capable, then we'll move into the COA process. So under the drone operations, again, the remote pilots can't fly the drones more than 400 feet above the ground or above the top of any particular structure, right? So if we had our tallest structure being the hotel, right? We could be 400 feet above the hotel or above an antenna or some type of a power line or something like that. The pilots have to keep visible line of sight. They have to be able to see it. It's actually easier to fly the drone at night than it is during the day. And the reason for that is the lights on the drone, right? During the day on a sky, a gray sky or even a bright blue sky, you can lose that drone at a distance, right? So they got to keep visual eyesight on it, and that's can be difficult. This is basically what our drone looks like. It's a quick snapshot of it. It's not very large, so it's, you get that thing up in the air, 200, 300 feet, and you start getting a football field away, you might not be able to see it, especially during the daytime. So it's commonly used for search and so here's drone in general, right? Commonly used for search and rescue because it's a great aerial view and covers significant amount of ground compared to what people on foot can do, right? Accident and crime scene reconstruction, we use it for that quite a bit. It also has the technical capabilities of like mapping out an accident and doing the measurements for the officers and kind of identifying some of the math for them. And then they can just kind of put it all into a software program that we utilize, and it'll kind of map out the entire crash for them. So our accident team, when they're doing fatals and serious accidents, they can use the drone, and it's a serviceability piece for them for sure. Large event overviews. We'll use the drone this weekend, right? This week for the 4th of July. We'll put it up, we'll use it, we'll have it for intelligence purposes. Our intention also will be to use the drone in a fireworks enforcement capacity later on in the evening, right? So first time we've done that, we're gonna use the drone, we're gonna put it up. We have a team of non-sworn employees. We've got some records specialists along with our civilian crime criminalist, who's one of our drone operators, to put the drone up, identify locations that are having fireworks activity, identifying the yard, the address, and then we will come back at that particular resident at a later date, not on the 4th of July, and cite using that system. We haven't done it in the past. It's a new strategy. We're going to see how it works. We're hopeful, but we're going to see. And then we've used it to breach and clear dangerous environments, buildings, large structures. You're going to see a video on that in the process here. Drone technology is rapidly evolving, all right? So in the very near future, autonomous drones will be a part of law enforcement agencies across the country. It's already starting to occur. Drones as first responders will be a force multiplier for police departments. I can tell you that there are drones that are attached to ShotSpotter technology, so when a ShotSpotter is alerted, drones are flown immediately to the area, respond like a 911 call, and they're just gathering intelligence. They're referring information back to dispatch, back to officers, or back to a crime center, right? So if an agency or a municipality or a region had a crime center, that information can be fed back to officers that are monitoring cameras or other information in the area. So that's a force multiplier, and that's coming. We don't have immediate plans for that type of technology, but as it's developed and as we see its success, it could be something that could be utilized in North Glen in the future, right? We don't really have a need for that just yet, but there are jurisdictions where ShotSpotter technology is absolutely integral part of their crime fighting strategy, and having those drones as immediate response to those particular areas could really provide, fleeing information, fleeing vehicle information, different, footpaths of fleeing individuals from a crime scene, which could provide information for officers to track different offenders and even victims in that circumstance, to gather additional evidence and gather additional witnesses. So it's a technology that's growing rapidly, and it's exciting to see where it goes, and we'll have to, just kind of revisit it on a very regular basis to see how that technology is developing. This is gonna be one drone operation where we used it on a hostage barricade situation. This is in Aspen Apartments off of Malley Drive. In this incident, this individual was wanted on a murder. When we attempted to make contact, the resident took, this is a family's residence, he took several people in the residence, held them hostage, wouldn't let them leave the residence. So this is our drone footage on the apartment. You'll see him split the blinds and start to fire out the building. This is just one time that we captured this individual shooting out of the apartment. He was shooting out of the apartment on multiple occasions during this incident. Our second incident, this individual was wanted for the attempted murder of a resident in 11801. Late last year, we had 2 incidents in 11801. One was resulted in a murder, one resulted in an attempted murder. This is the attempted murder. This individual resided right around the corner from 11801. We had a warrant for his arrest. We executed the warrant in the address. We couldn't locate the individual, but there were areas of the house that were very difficult to clear safely. So as you see this video, we used a drone in a basement area and then in this crawl space area to actually locate the offender hiding within the structure.
Wow.
Now, could you communicate to this person through the drone or no?
We can't communicate through the drone, but we were able to communicate to him, and he was quite aware that we knew he was there, because the drone's like literally right on top of him here.
Surprise.
Yeah, so we were able to communicate down, because this is just a crawl space, right? Once we could see that, hey, he's in this particular area, this vicinity, we communicated with him, and he eventually came out, right? So we didn't have to send officers into harm's way. Not only did we clear this particular area with this drone, but we also cleared the basement in general with the drone. And there's drone technology that actually has the capability of moving doors and opening, can't turn handles and stuff, but if a door is ajar, it has enough strength and capability, and it's designed that it can move doors open. If they're blocked and lodged, it won't really do that, but if it has the ability, and we moved a door with this, we moved into the location, cleared the basement, found the crawl space, moved into the basement with officers, cleared the crawl space, pulled the subject out with the use of a drone. So we've used the drone to clear buildings and different structures on multiple occasions. And in this one, it was, this is an attempted murder offender. So, is there a risk with apprehending this suspect? Absolutely. Significant risk. And the tool, the drones, it's just another way to keep our officers safe and gather as much intelligence as we can. Now, if he doesn't want to come out, eventually, we have other options, right? We could have sent in a dog. We could have used gas. We could have used other tools to try to make ourselves safer. But, first line of defense here was just let's get eyes in there. Let's see what we can see. And that was one of the ways the drone was used, in this particular incident. The DA definitely liked the video of the suspect shooting out the windows when he's got a hostage situation, right? So, that evidence gathering piece to this is critical as well. Any questions on drone or the FLAC stuff?
Lots of questions, actually, Deputy Chief. They've been waiting patiently. Councilmember Kondo.
DC, thank you. Great presentation. Unfortunately, I'm not able to see the video that you played, but I'm curious, is the same Mavic 2 drone the one that you used to fly into the crawl space, or is that a different, smaller drone?
I kind of heard the question. Are you saying, is it the same drone? It was the same drone that observed both videos, if that's the question. We have one drone. The drone that I showed you does not push doors, okay? The one I showed you a photo of. One of our drone operators has a second drone, and that is the drone that pushed the door. And that's the drone we use to push the door, right? So in our 2025 budget request, you'll see some drone pieces in there, kind of update where we're at on drone technology.
And a follow-up question, if you indulge me, Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Go for it.
I just want to confirm, you said that you don't have to have you can have a non-commissioned officer operating, non-sworn officer. So is the footage and everything that the drone acquires legitimate for use in prosecution and whatnot?
Sure. Great question. So just think of our CSIs. Both of our CSIs are civilians. They testify very regularly in court. They collect evidence on crime scenes all day, every day. That's their job. So you don't have to be sworn to be able to testify or to be able to produce evidence in a criminal case or anything like that. And our CSI is one of our trained and certified officers on the drone. He was operating the drone in both of these incidents that I showed you on video here. And in one of them, that drone actually belongs to that CSI officer. And that's the one that pushes doors, and that's the one that, has that capability.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So mine is, maybe it's speculative, but when these autonomous drones that you're talking about, is that still going to require line of sight?
So, no, they're going to require different parameters and restrictions by the FAA. So that's kind of why the technology, I think, has been slow to roll out, because there is definitely autonomous drones now. You can see different locations that have had packages delivered utilizing drones and stuff like that. But those are restrictions by FAA. FAA controls everything that's in the air. So until all of that kind of gets worked out, you're seeing it slow rolled out for specific uses. But it won't require line of sight. It'll be programmed. It'll be GPS coordinated, and it'll fly a path that it's directed to based on GPS coordinates for a particular location. So kind of best line of sight or best straight line to and from a location, from deployment location to crime location, so to speak. And then it would probably be programmed to essentially fly a patterned approach around a specific area to gather the best amount of evidence it can. And people far smarter than me are going to be the ones that do all of that calculation and come up with ideas about, what does that pattern look like, and how do they do that, and how do they make it, safe to operate. So it's still a ways off, but it's not far. We'll see them within the next few years.
Okay, yeah, that was all I was curious about.
Yeah, amazing. Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, DC. It's really informative. So and maybe this is kind of getting into, sorry. Into technical error.
Technical difficulties as well.
You want to go to Megan real quick?
Seems to be the night. Sure, I'll get back to you. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to sort of make a comment and just make sure that I'm really understanding everything that you're presenting, because I think the overarching thread I'm seeing from all of these technology updates that we are doing is just safety all around, safety for our officers, safety for suspects, safety for our community. And I'm really enjoying that. And I just really want to emphasize that for everyone watching at home, that I think like that is the through line here, and that like, I mean, sometimes I feel, you know, you're talking about autonomous drones and I'm like, oh, that seems dystopian. But it does seem like there is a lot of good coming out of this that I'm very stoked on, so.
There are certainly plenty of groups across the country that have lots of eyes on these type of technologies, right? There are lots of eyes on Flock, and Flock is just one company that does ALPRs, right? It's not the only company, right? There are many companies that do ALPRs. Flock has been able to capitalize it in ways that maybe some other companies haven't by doing these kind of public-private partnerships and making it extremely affordable, because ALPR cameras were not extremely affordable in the past. This subscription type service has probably provided the opportunity for smaller jurisdictions as well as businesses to jump into utilization of the product, right? But there are lots of eyes on how is the data used, kind of similar to the questions you asked. How long is it kept? What's it used for? Who has access? Are there laws to determine when it's got to be destroyed and all of those factors? And most states have already kind of implemented those laws, Colorado being one of them, right? On how long you can keep this data, how you can use it. There's a lot of pieces in that MOU that tells us how to manage the data, how to use the data, make sure who's trained on the data, it's not misused. You'll see more and more of that as this technology advances. Autonomous drones not, being one of the other issues that are certainly going to be challenged by groups who look at this and say, wait a minute here, this is Big Brother, and there's also dangers to this technology. So lots of groups looking at it, lots of law enforcement agencies in discussions, and not a ton of simple answers that are going to be appease everyone, but again, as we use the technology and as it becomes more available to people, then you'll really be able to see how it can be used and managed in a responsible way.
Interesting that Flock is not the only organization. Does Flock have a partnership with other companies that do the same thing? So like, say like, we have Flock, Westminster has company XYZ. Like, would we be able to then talk with them and their data and technology? Or?
So there'd need to be some type of an interface, right? So we're
Yeah.
only able to get Flock data from Flock companies and from Flock equipment, right? Now, that doesn't mean that their system wouldn't work identically, right? So if we needed to search their system for something, we would have to contact them and ask them, hey, can you search this license plate in your system because you're not attached to Flock? And I can give you an example. In Illinois, lots of different agencies had different systems, right? Because Flock wasn't even available, right? So you would just make a contact to the individual agency to gather data and information if you needed it, right? So that's one of the advantages of Flock is, one, it's inexpensive, and two, that data sharing agreement is with all the agencies, and the agencies share the data. So it allows me to search a camera in Kansas.
Yeah, that's what I think, and as Mayor Pro Tem had mentioned, like that, my immediate thought, example is an Amber Alerts. Which I think is really useful. Yeah, or Silver Alert, so.
Yeah, very important. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Councilmember Nowicki?
Fixed it, yeah. So to be clear, the autonomous aspect, because you did have a sentence in here about drones being able to deploy when officers are not available. We are not at that point yet.
We are not,
Okay,
not within our
possibly.
jurisdiction. There are jurisdictions that are getting very, very close,
Okay.
and some may already have that technology.
Okay. As far as kind of the drone tech, are they capable of like thermal or night vision, the ones we have currently?
They are. So the ones we have are capable of thermal vision. And that's an important piece, right? Because at night, you're not going to see a whole lot, right? But you can see thermal imaging. So if we have somebody that is off in a foot pursuit, and we have the ability to put a drone up, it can search yards very safely, right? It can search areas. It'll pick up heat signatures on top of buildings. It'll, if people are hiding under cars that have been parked and there's no engine running for any period of time, that's gonna pick up a heat signature underneath that. So that technology is getting better and better. I can tell you that if you look at like the Denver helicopter system, those are high def, very strong heat, thermal imaging cameras, right? The ones that we have on our drone, it's solid, but it's not, that advanced yet. Those cameras are expensive. We keep trying to improve it. So as we move into new drones, we'll try to improve that technology as well. But our drones currently have that technology. I even have one that attaches to my cell phone. It plugs in right where the port is, and I can search bushes and everything else with my phone.
Interesting.
It will find a firearm. I found multiple firearms with that particular piece, not here, but I've used it, I've had it for years. And you can find clothing that people run out of, because it will retain a heat signature for a period of time. You can recover firearms. Most people carry a firearm illegally in their waistband. It will retain a heat signature for a period of time. You can find animals. So if you're searching a yard and you don't know if there's an animal in the yard, there's a dog or whatever, you can find animals in the yard because the heat signature from the animal. So there is technology there that's tremendously advantageous, and our drones currently have it.
Okay. That's, again, really fascinating. How often would you say they're used in a day, drones?
Not enough, because we only have we only have 4 operators right now. That's why we want to move to 8. An additional 8. It's actually an additional 6. It would be 11 across all shifts. Another reason we want to bring out more drones is to make sure that every watch can have a drone in the field. So right now, we have the 1 drone. As we pick up more drones, we could have drones in supervisors' cars on every shift, and there'd be a cycle where there's always a drone available out on the road.
And last question, and you may not know this, it may be a little bit of conjecture, but how long until a drone can engage a suspect?
Well, engage in a physical way to try to apprehend.
Yeah, well,
It's potential, I mean, there's certain potential for that in the future, for sure. I don't know the technology aspects of it, but like something like a bolo wrap is a good example, right? We don't particularly use bolo wraps here, but bolo wrap is a device that it's good for use in an outdoor space, because what it does is it's discharged at a person, and it wraps them so that their arms and legs are tied essentially in a loop. Just wraps around them 3-4 times until it immobilizes them and they are no longer able to follow, are no longer able to move, right? It's not super effective tool because you could have an arm raised, you could have anything, and if you're inside of a house or something like that, any piece of furniture is going to stop the motion of the wrapping, right? It's good for outdoor space, right? So could a drone be used to deploy something like a bolo wrap or a taser or something like that? Yes, I think it could be. I think you could see that in the future. But in order for that to be done, I think you're going to need line of sight and officers that have the ability to make sure that that use of force is applicable in those circumstances, not from an autonomous perspective.
Right.
So unless the technology advances to the point where you have a real-time crime center and somebody is watching that camera as it's operating, and they have control of the drone, even though it's autonomous, they have control of the drone, then maybe you could see that. But do I think we'll get there? We will. It's just a matter of when.
And kudos to that operator in the video who was able to fly it in such a small space.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
They're mobile. They're very maneuverable. They're small. They're not gigantic, machines. They're small, and they have, multitude of capabilities.
Skynet, it's coming.
Yeah, for real.
I have a couple of questions. Really fascinated with the technology of the drones that are being used. Drones as first responders, right, is kind of the umbrella that it's under. And I heard a lot about that at the National League of Cities Crime Prevention and Public Safety Committee that I'm on, and funding for that coming, through everybody's way. But some of the cities that they highlighted was, I think Chula Vista was one, and I know some council members mentioned like the thermal imaging, but also does ours have the Zoom feature?
It
Zoom
does.
events? Okay.
It does, and again, there's a lot of, differences in the cameras that can be attached to the drones, so it's a cost effectiveness, right? Like I said, we've got a basic drone right now, and as we improve and increase our drone use and And, we'll try to be a little more selective on the technology that we apply to it, so.
Some of the drones that I read up on have features, I mean, the loudspeaker was also something that was mentioned, being able to, talk through it and maybe even receive communication, so like a hostage situation, for example, being able to use it in that way. But you mentioned like the payload delivery, so some of those uses could also save lives. I read about being able to drop like Narcan, ADs, EpiPens, things like that. And my first thought was like, wow, this could actually save lives if somebody's having
Sure.
an emergency and, you have to get to them very quickly. How incredible would that be? So when that comes back in 2025, or I'm hoping that some of those drones will show some of those cool features. I don't know if that changes like the size versus being able to navigate through and, crawl.
It does, for sure. It depends on the, and that's, you're gonna start to see police departments throughout the country have drones that are more specific to different tasks, so they'll have multiple drones that have different
makes sense.
capabilities and uses, right?
Yeah.
I know that police departments have used drones to drop phones to individuals so that we can communicate with them, right? There also needs to be some anti-drone technology used as well, because when drones can start dropping payloads, that is also a public safety concern, right? So now you've got a large event, a venue, and a drone can be flown from anywhere with no visibility into a space that could be problematic, right? So drone technology, I've utilized it in the past where we had anti-drone technology so that if a drone was flying in a specific area, we knew it and we could pinpoint the location of the operator, because it's all radio and communication strategies, right? Frequencies. So that's going to be a necessary technology for police departments in the future as well. I mean, think about a Lollapalooza event, because I can use that as a perfect example. I've used the drone technology in those events, right? So that I have a Lollapalooza event that's completely secure, fencing, searched every single person that gets in, but somebody is able to fly drugs in and drop them into a location. Somebody is able to fly a weapon into that venue. Somebody is able to fly a payload, maybe an explosive, into that venue, right? So anti-drone technology is something that you will start to see utilized by agencies across the country as well.
That's actually pretty scary, but yes, that makes a lot of
Two
sense.
sides
It
of
just-
every coin,
two
right?
sides to everything. Oh, no, Councilmember Burns' anxiety, no.
Just spiking.
Yeah, so, and then also, besides tactical emergencies, or whatever you want to call it, but thinking about like real-time flooding events, or being able to, surveil areas, and of course, active shooter situations. I don't remember which city, but the thermal imaging that you mentioned, I believe a teenager was just saved because they were able to locate this teenager in a field, and the kid was overdosing, almost died. So they were able to locate the kid and save his life. And this was recently, within the last couple weeks, and I don't remember which city it was. So it has potential for a lot of good as well. And along the veins of what was mentioned before, in terms of how the public, I guess, would perceive this, how our community would receive this. Cities like Chula Vista, they did a year-long community engagement process before they increased the number of drones, before they increased the uses of the drones. Their system allows for residents to actually view the drones in different areas and ask, why was this drone flying over my house? And then they can give them data, so it's very transparent.
Sure.
So just something to keep in mind as we move forward. I think that community engagement and education is going to be important, so that people aren't scared, and that, their privacy, for all the reasons
sure.
that you mentioned, will be violated. I know that was a huge issue that came up. We had to engage. So otherwise, this has been really fascinating. The future of technology, and as it relates to law enforcement, I think is incredible moving forward. I don't think, does anybody else have any questions? That was really great conversation. Thank you so much, Deputy Chief.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. That was really great. Thank you. Great, and our next topic is our Crisis Response Unit update. We have Crisis Response Unit Program Manager Jessica Hulse, who will present the update to council. Welcome, and thanks for being so patient. We had so many questions on that last topic.
Yeah, thank you. I found it interesting too.
It was great.
So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, for having me here. I'm here to provide the council with the updates from the Crisis Response Unit. This is our quarterly presentation. So as a reminder, the Crisis Response Unit works out of the Northglenn Police Department. We respond to crisis calls regarding mental health and behavioral concerns. We were approved by council in October of 2021. We are currently covered through ARPA funding through the end of 2024. And we provide monthly reports that can be found at northglenn.org/crew. So these are just our numbers that encapture January 1st, 2024 through June 17th of 2024, so about halfway through the year. The Northglenn Police Department has sent the crew 140 different referrals. That stands for the different people. 30 of those individuals have been experiencing homelessness. Through those 140 referrals, we have provided 486 services. So you can just kind of see the numbers as we go down the line. Municipal court always looks low. Our community court program, as you know, was paused. Tomorrow, we actually have a planning session to get that back up and going. So hopefully that'll be sooner than later. A lot of that guidelines and structure has already been outlined. It's just agreeing on how to make it happen. But you can still see we have worked with people, so we have provided 30 services for people who have been referred through our court system. Only one of those individuals was a new referral. The rest of the people that we work through the court system are already clients of CREW. Neighborhood services, so our code enforcement team, they have referred 13 different residents of Northglenn to us. Our community members, which includes people like yourselves, our schools, hospitals, they've referred 12 different individuals, of new individuals, but we have provided 135 services out of those community referrals. So those 12 individuals represent our new referrals for 2024, not total people. And then self-referrals are 65, with 46 of those people experiencing homelessness, 1,180 services for self-referred people. So that just means that people who want to work with us, they continuously come back. But for a total of 417 unique individuals, not all new referrals, but 417 total unique individuals that we've worked with this year. So the crisis response unit, historically I have reported that information by referral source. So you have seen referrals from the police department, from our municipal court, from our self-referrals, from our community. I switched it up a little bit for this presentation so we can kind of focus more on like the 3 pillars of what type of interventions the crisis response unit provides. So our first intervention is our crisis intervention. And this is the bulk of what we do every day. We respond to calls that are rooted in mental and behavioral health. We provide crisis intervention through our referrals from the Northglenn Police Department, as well as our neighborhood services, our community, and our self-referrals. So anyone who's experiencing a crisis of some sort, that means that we're not going to be with them long-term typically. It's going to be short-term case management. Crisis intervention is to stabilize that individual, help them get back to their functioning baseline so they can go ahead and self-advocate and move forward from whatever crisis they're experiencing at that point in time. So the outcomes of these types of calls are going to be connections to therapy. They're going to be assistance with transportation. It's going to be connection to stabilizing resources, such as maybe a detox center, a walk-in crisis center, people who want to go get medical attention, connection to financial assistance if it's a financial crisis that is threatening their basic income and their homes, hospitalizations, or case conferencing with schools or other partner organizations to help that individual. So I say we have our crisis intervention, we also have our homeless intervention. So that's another pillar of ours, is our homeless intervention. The crew provides homeless intervention through referrals from North Glen Police Department, our municipal court, the community, and self-referrals. And homeless intervention takes place with a various couple of different ways. Of course, we have our encampment response. We also have our rounds that we do on Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays through the Civic Campus, E.B. Rains Park, and the Underpass Tunnel. We provide our Friday office hours from 9 in the morning until 12 p.m. We participate in a lot of different case conferencing across the county because homelessness takes a regional approach. So we participate in the Built for Zero campaign. We do the employment case conferencing on a biweekly basis. And we also participate as a swap partner for that severe weather shelter. And then our third pillar is something that's going to be a little bit on the newer side as it's being developed, which is our targeted violence prevention program. And this is a field that a lot of co-response units across Colorado are moving into, because as you can imagine, as you have a unit that focuses primarily on behavioral concerns, there are other concerns that arise from those behavioral concerns, and that is this person a threat to the community? We're constantly working with our police department to identify that, and then seeing if we can prevent some of that harm to the community. So this is where it's called the Targeted Violence Prevention Program. That's not my term, that's a term, I think it's come up through the FBI. And it focuses on creating multidisciplinary teams to focus on concerns regarding behavior that's reported to the either, in our case, the crew unit or our police department. And then we work to surround that person in research, see what supportive factors that they have in place, what supports can be brought into place, and then how can we move that person away from any type of anticipated violence into a pathway of safety. So it's a prevention program, which would be so the other two are more reactive. Someone calls when there's a problem, when they call when they're experiencing a crisis, they call when they're experiencing homelessness, so it's a reaction to that call, and this is the prevention piece right here. So to have an effective targeted violence prevention program, it does take training. One of our officers and myself went through the threat evaluation and reporting class that was offered through CIAC, which is Colorado Information Analysis Center. They are going to come in and do another training. We are offering that training free of charge to other jurisdictions around us, and we currently, I think, have 37 people, so we're above capacity. It was capped at 30. They did open some extra spots because it had a lot of interest. So our police department and crew are hosting that to the end of July. We're having people come, or other units from Lakewood, from Thornton, from Adams County, and Westminster, as well as a hospital system. They're joining us as well. The other pieces of of training that we will need are the terrorist radicalization assessment protocol. And it sounds a little bit more intense than it is. It's really just an assessment, because whenever you're going to take in referrals that might have anticipated violence, you need to have a thorough screening or an evidence-based screening tool, and that's so far is the best evidence-based screening tool that people are using. And then we will join the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals and be in good standing with them, which just means that you're participating in trainings throughout the year and sharing information. So I have case studies that are based off of these three different pillars. So for our crisis intervention, I just chose a story for each one that's happened in 2024. So for our crisis intervention, we had a woman call a check well-being on her mom, who she was concerned about. Her mom lives in North Glen. She does not live in North Glen. So she called our police department. We went out with our police officers, and there was a 68-year-old female who had suicidal ideations. She was experiencing severe stress. She thought she was going to be losing her apartment. She could not get her medication. She thought she was going to lose her apartment based on her rent and her utilities. And she did not know how to mediate this with her landlord. So she thought last resort, and so she was having severe depression. So what we did was we went in, we worked with her, I think 3 times. We were able to get her access to her medication, which helped. We were able to facilitate a conversation with her landlord. She kept her apartment and she was able to get paid up on all of her utilities. She had money coming in, she just didn't know how to advocate for a payment plan. So all of that went away. We were also able to work with one of our fire department people to come in and help her. She was having some struggles with her ADA capacity with her home, and so they were able to do some slight modifications and help her out with that. So that was a really nice, that's a good visual of what our crisis intervention looks like. We had mental health, we had physical disability within a home, which was leading to some behavioral stressors within her and her daughter's relationship, and we were able to go in and go ahead and help that on the intervention side. With our homeless intervention, we had a gentleman, again, this was a quicker response. He was 56, had been experiencing homelessness for 10 years, really under the radar, living out of his car. He had worked full-time up until COVID. He was employed by one of the trades. After COVID, he tried to find employment again at that full-time capacity and did not think that he could. He thought his age was playing into that, just because it is a trade. So he thought that he might be experiencing some ageism with trying to get back into the working industry. So he came to us, he had all of his motivations there that were internally driven. He just needed help getting into different programs. He has criminal justice history with his family. So some of the programs that he had tried to get involved in had said, hey, is this your family member? And he thought that he was being judged and decided to not engage with them anymore. We said, how about we go ahead and apply again? This time we will advocate for you. He said yes. It took one application on a Friday to go and apply to that Ready to Work program in Boulder that houses you and gets you employment all at the same time. I think by the next Wednesday, he had been accepted and his bed opened in like 2 weeks after that. So he moved in pretty quickly and he came back and he said, I don't know why I dragged my feet with working with them. They've never stigmatized me for my family's behavior and they've been really great to work with. So that was a really nice homeless intervention that happened. And then a potential case, so if we actually had our targeted violence prevention program up and running, this is a great example. We had a youth who lives here in North Glen, goes to school in a different city. Crew worked with their police department when this kiddo had been identified as saying threatening things in his school. It was also found that he had access to weapons in his own home. So our North Glen Police Department and our crew went, we helped the family secure a safe. We helped them establish good practices for the weapons that they have in their home. We were able to work with the school district. The kiddo was going to a school that did not have full services for their IEP. So we were able to help them get connected to a school that does have full services for their IEP. We identified that this kiddo has very low IQ as well as is on the autism spectrum disorder. So put some parameters around that with communication tools. The kiddo has been doing great in their own home, and hopefully they will be moving forward with the support that they need. We did education on why this big response was happening. We put safety protocols in place with the new school that the kiddo is going to. So that's just what the targeted violence prevention program can look like. So we don't know, it's really hard to decide if we helped prevent anything, but we definitely help the kiddo get connected to resources that they need and the family as well.
Hey, Jessica, I have
Yep.
quite a few hands up. I don't know if you're ready to take a
Sure.
few questions.
Yeah, I
if
can
you'd
do that.
like. Okay, great. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. So great presentation. My question is regards to the TVP program and the targeted violence prevention. Are there elements of domestic violence in this or not?
That's a great question. Targeted violence prevention does not really go into domestic violence. That's a different parameters. And when we talk to people who study why that is. There's a lot more emotions and less outside leakage that happens when it's going to be within a home. So there's other tactics you can use. And it's not to say that if something came across our desk that, that maybe a hospital was reporting on behalf of a person, that we couldn't use the same tactics for. I have not been trained in that TRAP 18, so I don't know if that is a thorough assessment for domestic violence. So more information to come on that, but it is typically treated separately than domestic violence.
Okay, thank you. And one follow-up question. The TRAP program, and I know it's early days, but does this help the city get connected to national databases, whether it's the FBI or Department of Homeland Security, so that we're more networked and informed of potential threats?
That's another great question. Our department's already connected to Kayak, and you can come up and correct me if I'm wrong. So, which is the Colorado Information Analysis Center, where a lot of data is shared from. This is bringing crew into that Kayak reporting as well. Now, a lot of the training is done through places that have databases of research. So for example, the Global Information of Forensic Research, that is something that we would be a part of. So we would have access to research articles that might help us form our own policies and guidelines and our practices. But a lot of that data information is something that our officers already have access to. We might use it in a different way as we look at behavior, and they're looking at crimes. So that it's going to be kind of a marriage of what behavior could potentially indicate crimes and what crimes are also driving behavior. So it's going to be a little bit of a back and forth flow of information.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So my question has to do with, I know there's been a couple of instances where we've had neighbors that have disputes and that their crew has gotten involved. How does that fit in your 3 pillars? What is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would go ahead and say that's under crisis intervention. So if someone's experiencing an unsafe situation in their home due to an escalated conflict within their neighborhood or in their neighbor relationship, that would fall under our crisis intervention.
And have you had, how much success? Or
Success?
can you-
Yeah.
How does that work? I mean,
We
I'm kinda
typically have
curious.
one side that wants to engage in a conflict mediation. We have had success when it was mandated through the court.
Got it.
So with our community court, if the community court is open to housed residents, right now it's more looking at like a homeless court model. But if that expands to housed residents, and it's also already open if judge wants that, they can ask for mediation. The one that was successful was done through our code enforcement. It was a code enforcement case, and so that's when that was brought up. But typically when we have someone that's coming to us saying, I'm having conflicts with our neighbor, as soon as we ask if they want to do a mediation, they're nervous about retaliation if we're reaching out on the other side. Or we have reached out on the other side and the other side has said, no, this is all on them. It has nothing to do with me. I won't engage. And a mediation really only works if you have 2 participating parties.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. I was curious about that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Kondo asked one of my questions regarding domestic violence. So same brain. This is kind of a forward-thinking question and maybe something that y'all can come back to us with. With the recent SCOTUS decision regarding we can now make camping and essentially homelessness illegal within our city bounds. What is sort of our next steps as a city?
So, yeah, I can answer that question. We talked about it today. We actually had an internal right-of-way cleanup meeting today. Corey is reviewing the Supreme Court decision that was issued on Friday that upheld the Grants Pass Oregon ban on camping. So more to come. You know, it's status quo as of today, and probably we're hoping to get together by the end of the month. He's putting together a legal memo for council, and so you'll receive that legal memo. I think Deputy Chief looked up the Supreme Court decision and said it's 72 pages long. So Corey needs time to really go through that and figure out what impact does it have on us? And then what do we, if anything, change with our current protocol?
Yeah, that's just thinking about budget and planning and what that means for us. I would hope from my fellow Dias members, it means nothing, and we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing. But we'll see. And yeah, that was kind of my big question, and I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. It's always so nice to hear your case studies. It's so tragic on one hand, but it is nice that we are the silver lining. Well, you are, not me. I don't do anything. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your support. That's doing something.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Sorry, I jumped in last minute.
You're good.
But yeah, I appreciate you guys leading the way for real. Like I see it all the time with every municipality and everywhere we go. People want to know our secrets, you know. So, but you know, I'm really proud of it. But anyway, question I had was, when does SWAP or the severe weather shelter activate during the hot summer months?
Yeah, so last summer SWAP was not available. This summer it is available. The activation and that's just due to the budget. I think we had money left over from the winter season, so they're using that for the summer. So right now, the weather protocol is if it's 98 degrees or higher, 2 days in a row.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
Thank you. I echo what everybody has said. Great, great questions, but I will let you continue because I know you still have some more information that involves the budget. So I'm really interested in getting to that.
Just to remind you what Adams County Co-Response is kind of looking like. As a reminder, we were the first internal program for Adams County. I believe Westminster was the first co-response program for Adams County, but they were brought in internal afterwards because they had been contracted out. So just to run through it, North Glen, we have an internal co-response team that's unpaired, so we are not riding with an officer. Westminster has an internal co-response team that's unpaired. Federal Heights has an internal co-response team, which just changed. So they are now contracted. So as of, I think it's just happening. So they're going to be contracted with the same team that Brighton is contracted with. So I think Federal Heights will have one co-responder, unpaired, contracted. Adams County co-response team was through WellPower when I wrote this memo, and it has since as well changed. They are being brought in-house. They will have a team of 7. We've been invited to sit on their hiring panel, so more to come on their team soon. But they will have 1 program manager and 6 co-responders in an unpaired model as well. Thornton has an internal co-response team that's paired, so meaning that their officer and clinician ride in a car all day together. And then I put an asterisk for co-response programs that also provide the homeless interventions, because many of these cities have homeless intervention teams that are separate from their co-response models. So I'm going to remove the asterisk from Federal Heights as of on Friday when I found out about that. And so we are the only model that pairs homeless interventions with co-response. There's many reasons for that. We are organizationally structured under our city management team, which allows us to still have access to homeless management information system. If you are under the police department, you are not allowed access to that information. They don't allow police departments access to the homeless management information system. So that's one reason that we are modeled the way we are. And then the ones that are contracted is just out of their scope. The co-response programs that are brought in through public mental health, they don't have the history that I know of to handle the homeless interventions as well. Financial impact. So the National Alliance to End Homelessness found that housing a person experiencing chronic homelessness resulted in an average tax savings of $4,800 per year. This was done in 2017, so when adjusted for inflation, that number is now $6,076 per person for chronic homelessness. That's a person that's been experiencing homelessness for over a year. Typically, the people that we get housed are people who are experiencing chronic homelessness, because that's where our continuum of care allots funding dollars to. So anyone that we get matched with a voucher is going to have been experiencing chronic homelessness. So when we look at what the financial impact of that is in North Glen, just for this year, you can look at it by month, but the total is $139,748, because that's how many people we've been housing this year. If I look over the history of Crew, we've actually housed 83 individuals, so that number grows. I often get asked what grants we are applying for. So this is a rundown of the grants that we have applied for as well as been awarded. So the first one, we were awarded the opioid settlement grant. You guys signed you guys allowed the IGA to be signed last week. So that money will be dispersed shortly here. We were also awarded the regional transportation grant for a total of $1,897. That provides bus passes for individuals that need, they have an imminent or an exigent reason to needing a bus pass. We have applied for the Department of Justice BJA grant, which is for the training that goes along with that TVP program. The numbers up here, that was also because I wrote it for a regional-wide approach. So that's not just how much it would cost to train North Glen. That is to train North Glen, Thornton, and Lakewood as well. So that would provide ATAP membership, ATAP conferencing, the Global Information of Forensic Research membership, partners training, and that's all for 3 years, as well as starting an internship program. The Crew is looking at bringing in a clinical intern, that would provide the equipment for that space. And then we also applied for the Adams County Public Health Department grant. That was specific for co-responders. We applied for $418,630. That would provide for a co-responder salary as well as a case manager salary, a secure transport vehicle so we can provide transportation on the spot to places other than hospitals or jail, training, onboard tech costs such as a computer, 2 computers, and then onboard safety equipment such as our vests and radios for those two positions. And that would be for 2 years, or through the end of 2026.
When would you hear?
I think they're supposed to announce end of August or beginning of October. Yeah.
Quite a gap.
I'm sorry, beginning of September.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Missed a month there. And with our budget, this is just our current budget. We are currently slated for 1 program manager and 4 co-responders. Our operating budget is $506,000, 662. $441,000 of that is for our personnel. $64,861 goes towards our communication, our training, our travel, and emergency services.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this whole presentation. This
Yeah.
is just, the work that you do is so incredible and so crucial to our city. As you can imagine, we have more hands up, so I have some
Great.
questions of my own, but I'll let them ask questions. Councilmember Condo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Jessica, for this great presentation. I was just doing this math here. So if you were to annualize, I'm going back to slide 14. If you were to annualize these 4 months and multiply by $6,070, I think, for cost savings, I mean, that, first of all, that will cover pretty much your personnel costs, which is pretty impressive. So in fact, I just did the math. I think you said you housed 83 people. That's more than $500,000 of cost savings. So these are all, just doing the math, as I'm the math guy, it is really impressive. And kudos to you for applying for grants. And I certainly hope that we will be successful in receiving some of this money. I think this is really speaks volumes to all the effort that you do to grow the program, to share best practices with adjoining municipalities, and to continue to fund this effort. And then my last comment, I just want to say for the public record, I really was impressed by your involvement in the Family Justice Center workshop slash strategic planning that occurred Wednesday, Thursday last week. That was really, I think, a great opportunity to bring the meeting of the minds of all the stakeholders together to figure out how to address domestic violence. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Well, Member Kondo just took all my thunder. I really just want to echo all of his sentiments. You know, again, I think this helps. Number one, it helps the community. And number two, kind of saves taxpayers money. You know, and acts as that vital connection to all the services for these folks. Just one kind of small question. The 418,630, is that to be split? Is that just for North Glen Crew, or is that to be split Adams County wide?
That is correct. That would, $418,000 would be just for North Glen Crew. So it would fund the co-responder salary and the case manager salary through the end of 2026. It would also, a secure transport vehicle is around $70,000. So we're looking at one that can be utilized. You have to have it certified as a secure transport vehicle if you're transporting for M1s, which is mental health hold, as well as it would secure their belongings for them so we could transport people with their belongings. We wouldn't have to leave them behind, and keep any co-responder safe as they're driving the vehicle. Training, I think it was about $5,000 per year, so $10,000 total in that budget. Onboarding tech costs, the cost of 2 computers and 2 cell phones. And then safety equipment, like I said, those vests are pretty expensive, and then those radios that we use are about $5,000 each.
So that's 418 spread over 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. So if we kind of just back of the envelope here, 2025 budget saying, you know, let's just take the operating budget of what you have on here currently, 506, or round up, say 507. Would you, some of that money be applied to that?
Well, the budget amount for 2025 is not going to be 507. It's going to be more than 507.
Okay.
Because you're going to have a percentage for salary increases as well as any other asks that Jessica has put in for 2025 budget that council will see on August 5th.
Okay.
So I would say wait to see what those numbers look like. This grant request is to help offset that budget.
I guess that was my question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's not gonna cover it fully.
Right.
It'll help offset it. We'll still have to budget for the amount. This is a super micro accounting piece. We get the revenue in, we still have to budget. So you're still gonna see 500,000 plus whatever, and then revenue comes in. So it doesn't decrease the expenditure side of
Gotcha.
things.
All about that super micro funding piece. So, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Heather.
I have a question. I know there was a trigger point to require another co-responder.
Yes.
So would this grant kind of help towards that, or is this just for current salaries?
Yeah.
So we're still close to hitting that
So
trigger
that
point.
$418,000 is for the 2 new positions.
2 new positions.
Yes, 2 new positions. That trigger, so like Heather said, I will be presenting again on August 5th, and I will explain the trigger for those 2 new positions. The numbers that you guys are still seeing, so I had said, I think when it reached 15 calls for service per day. What we did was I took out the weekends because we have our wonderful co-responder Tristan, but it's just him on the weekends. So if Tristan is out of town, or Tristan is not in the office for whatever reason, or he's flex time to cover someone else's vacation, or out of town time, or out of office time, then we don't have those weekends covered. And so what I did was I took out the weekend numbers when we are experiencing our biggest fluctuation, and our per day is anywhere from about 13 to 21 contacts per day if we take out those weekends. So when I was just doing a general per day, it was not accurate of what we're feeling on a daily basis. And that's when I started looking at that case manager position, and this is coming from what other co-responder units are doing. I said, how do you offset? Because right now, we are getting called out. This morning, I was on a case management call. It took us about an hour to do with one of our code enforcement cases. And during that time, we had to bypass a person who had suicide ideation and another person who was having extreme conflict with their family that we're already connected to. So we had to bypass those 2 calls just because we were doing case management, which is important. Case management is important. But it's also something that a case manager could do and not someone who's going out into the field. They could be doing it from their desk. They could be creating that database of networks of resources. So that's why I added a case management component to it. And it also offers a career path growth. So we've talked a lot about where does co-response go? So entry point, a lot of people are interested in co-response who are not, they don't have the clinical experience or the life experience to be a co-responder, but they're a really good case manager and they bring a lot to the table that way. So we brought in a case manager position as we were assessing our needs, and then another co-responder position for that weekend help. And also another reason for that case co-responder on the weekends is because we are more proactive when we have a 2-person approach. We typically go out in 2s for safety. So if Tristan doesn't have an officer to go with him on the weekends to some of our clients because the officers are tied up doing officer work, then we can still be proactive on the weekends and get our clients connected through the weekends, especially for those that are discharging from the hospital over the weekends.
Great, yeah, thank you for that clarification, and yes,
Yep.
budget's coming up really soon. Councilmember Burns, did you have your hand up for a follow-up?
That's my question.
That was your
my
question,
question.
sorry.
That's what I was gonna say, once again, I don't see that trigger number in there, so.
Well, I'm glad we're all thinking that.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
No, just great job.
I will just close with one thing, and I'm gonna brag a little bit on Crew, because back in 2021, I remember going to my first NLC conference, and people were still trying to figure out, cities were trying to figure out, what are we doing with our ARPA funds? And we had it down, like, we're doing this, and they're like, what is that? And that model didn't exist. And I've seen time and time again throughout those last 3 years how thank you to you and your team, have been so far ahead of the curve in terms of developing this system. And you presented at CML and people were like, wow, this is incredible. Just because you've really looked at the entire system, right? You've looked at it as a whole, not just this piece, this piece, this piece, which is what some cities are doing. And then at NLC last year, still, people were trying to catch up and figure out, well, now we just started our program and they have it in 1 year and their funds are running out. So I heard that there is a priority in trying to push for more federal funding that will support these types of programs, because even though this is, something we've been doing for 3 years, a lot of cities are just starting to get their programs up and running. So I'm really hopeful that that collective push now that we're seeing is gonna hopefully get some more funding our way, just because everybody's seeing the value that it's indispensable. You should have one of these in every single city. So thank you. I'll just close with that and say thank you for the hard work that you're all doing.
Well, thank you.
It's so important and it's making a difference, so.
I do want to say that I really appreciate your comments, but I also want it known, I could not have done it if I wasn't in a city with a police department and a city management team and council that believed in that model.
Yeah.
So it was a group effort for sure. Thank you.
Yes, it definitely was, and thank you. I
Yep.
echo that as well.
Yep.
Great work. Thanks,
Yep, thank you.
Jessica. Yay. It's always great to get updates from Jessica on how amazing, all the amazing things we're doing. Our last agenda item, finally, is our city council quarterly agenda planning, and we have city manager Heather Geyer.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. So you know that I come and make this presentation on a quarterly basis. I'm not going to repeat the purpose for you this evening. Tonight's agenda, the time frame that we're looking at is through October 7th. The tentative future agendas that are included in your packet go through the end of the year, but just keep in mind, we're just talking about October 7th, so I'm not going to highlight anything beyond October 7th. This is really intended to be a discussion and for me to hear feedback from council on any questions you have about any agenda items, opportunity to reprioritize, and that sort of thing. So jumping into upcoming meetings, we will have a meeting cancellation in observance of Labor Day on September 2nd. As of now, I have not added any meetings. So we do have a 5th Monday in July that you will not have a meeting at because we typically don't meet on 5th Mondays unless council requests otherwise. So several items to highlight. There's a couple slides full of highlights for you this evening. On next Monday, we're bringing back the land acknowledgement statement to council. I will also have the revised council protocol for urgent information. That's Council Protocol 7. Will be included for your approval. I split, if you recall, I brought forward the council protocol urgent information and the response to resident requests. I've split them apart, so you're gonna have a request to amend the council protocol just for urgent information, and then as I continue work on resident response, I'll provide amendments for council to take action on at a later date. On July 22nd, council is going to hear a presentation from the CCPP board. That's part of their requirement. I believe, is it annually, Joanna? Is that requirement annual, the CCPP report?
It is.
And then I will bring back the strategic plan ideas in a draft framework. There are 119 ideas that leadership team, I organized in the 6 strategic priority areas last Thursday that leadership team is weighing in on and figuring out what could be 2025, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I hope to bring that framework back to you on July 22nd. That is what is scheduled. There are 2 other touch points, which would be August 26th, as well as it's scheduled for adoption. The strategic plan is scheduled for adoption by council on October 14th. We will have an executive session to provide council an update on the Justice Center Foundation issues. On August 5th, we dive right into budget. And so on this evening, you will receive a proposed budget in advance that you'll want to read through for the newer council members and ask any questions. You'll hear presentations by department. You'll also hear a presentation by our third-party outside consultant who does our compensation market study on an annual basis. On August 12th, we're going to have an executive session on legal advice on land use policy. So there is quite a bit of activity in the 2024 legislative session that staff is working with Corey Hoffman, our city attorney, in developing a strategy and approach in response to all of that legislation. And so the purpose of that executive session will be for that reason. And then August 19th is also a placeholder for budget. Sometimes we need 2 study session evenings to go through the budget. Sometimes we don't. It just depends. So that's the only item on August 19th. And typically with budget items for the newer council members, I don't schedule other items. It's solely budget because that takes up the full time. On August 26th, we're going to have our next tour of the new City Hall at 5 p.m. As we've shared in the past, and just last week, I believe it was, furniture is scheduled to be installed in early August, so you'll be able to tour the new facility with furniture in place in all the different office areas. I'll bring back the strategic plan, as I mentioned, with the 2025 ideas and budget implications. And then on September 9th, exciting news. We just made this determination today. We are planning for our last meeting in this building, in this council chambers. And we will hear a presentation from Jason Loveland, our Deputy City Manager, Finance Director, on the proposed 2025 budget. So one thing to note on budget, we provide council with a budget framework, with the opportunity for council to weigh in on the budget priorities. So when we go from August 5th and the later August date to this date on September 9th, that's the culmination of a couple discussions on budget and really you being able to provide your touch to the budget and help shape the budget. And so we're required by our city charter to present that proposed budget by the 20th of September, which is why it's important to have that presentation on September 9th. Additionally, it's important because on September 16th, that's when we're working towards having your first city council meeting in the new city council chambers of the new city hall. That was really wordy. Your first council meeting in the new city hall. Sorry about that. We are going to make it a very special evening, and so it'll be very ceremonial in nature. Right now, there's no real agenda items other than we're going to do a ribbon cutting, have a small reception, speeches by different project team members, and really have it be a celebratory evening. And by that point, we'll have all the kinks worked out of technology, knock on wood, in those chambers. So items to be scheduled, I did go ahead and schedule the response to the CRM request that Councilmember Walker had requested a few weeks ago. That is scheduled on August 12th. I just forgot to take it off of this slide, so my apologies there. And then originally I had my performance review scheduled to start in July and August. I'm shifting that to November, December. There is just too much going on right now. I don't have time to focus on my performance review and putting together the self-assessment and then providing the space for council to actually conduct the review. From my perspective, this is one of those things that I can take off my plate in order to focus on all the other things that are going on, in particular with moving into the new city hall, the events that are taking shape to go along with the celebratory nature of moving into the new city hall. So you will see that piece has changed. So tonight I'm looking for consensus on scheduling items as presented and happy to answer any questions, hear any comments.
Yes, thank you, City Manager Geyer. I'll start with one request, just because it is a request, and instead of asking it at the end of the council meeting, it does affect the schedule coming up really fast. Those of us that attended the FJC meeting, the Family Justice Center meeting, strategic planning, last week, had some in-depth conversations about what that would look like, including the need for having a temporary location until the new one is built out, whatever that looks like, or a place is renovated. And one of the requests from all of the cities, not just us, in the 17th Judicial District, is to look at what empty spaces, empty buildings could be used as a temporary location for an FJC or satellite until, you know, the master plan or the mothership, is that what they're calling it, is actually developed. So what I'm asking for is for council to have a discussion on our old, soon-to-be old City Hall as a temporary FJC. There are a lot of barriers to consider, honestly, in terms of, you know, we have pending EPA grants and things that could be affected. And so I think it's just worth the discussion more out of, if anything, good faith, to say that we at least took a look at a location that's available. Whether it pans out or not, I think it's worth for us to have that discussion. There are other areas in the 17th that are potentially good spots as well, so it's not just us, and I think that's wonderful too, and maybe that piece can be talked about as well, you know, that they may be a better fit anyway. They're looking for a centralized location, and us being right, you know, bisecting I-25 was one of the reasons why it could be a good location. But apparently there's other good locations as well. So I don't know if Councilmember Nowicki or Councilmember Kondo wanted to add to that since they attended that as well. You have anything else?
Yeah, you pretty much covered it.
Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, sorry.
Oops, hold on one
I
second.
didn't raise my hand.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I think you did a great job of kind of covering it. I like the way you put it. I do think that at least worth a discussion. You know, that way we're kind of making that good faith effort. Because those that were there, and I went for both days, it was really inspiring. You know, it's a great idea, but it's gonna require a lot of work and I think this is a real opportunity, for Adams County to come together to really provide these important services. You know, and certainly I want Northglenn to be kind of on the front end of that. Whatever that looks like, just, you know, kind of being at the table with the discussion, so
Yeah,
I would support that.
thank you, very well said. Councilmember Kondo, now you may speak. It's hard, the virtual thing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. I think you said it very well. And the reason why I feel like this is really important and worth the city looking into is that, you know, when you think about domestic violence, it is a vicious cycle in that children that are survivors of domestic violence situations sometimes end up becoming, or quite often become, the perpetrators of domestic violence. And so the cycle just continues to grow and grow and grow. And my realization is that, you know, much like we are employing novel technologies like Flock or drones to address really a very complicated public safety issue, the fact that family justice centers have been around since 2002, when the very first one was established in San Diego, and then President Bush was such a major proponent for this when he heard about it on the Oprah show. It seems like this whole issue of dealing with domestic violence really cuts across political lines. It's really about public safety, and if we could just at least look at it, maybe we're gonna end up saying no, but at least we've done the diligence and we've made a good faith effort, if you will, in the eyes of the rest of the counties, whether it's Broomfield or Adams or other municipalities that were present at the Family Justice Center workshop / strategic planning. It continues to position Northglenn as a leader and somebody who's out front leaning forward. So I'm definitely in favor of this.
Thank you, Councilmember Kondo. I don't know if I can add anything more eloquent than that. And, you know, I do have, besides, of course, my city role, I have very personal reasons for supporting this too. And breaking that cycle of violence is incredibly important for those kids and for those families. So regardless of what the outcome of this is, Northglenn as a leader, as Councilmember Kondo said, we're definitely in full support in whichever way and whatever way that looks like. So I guess to shorten this up, just need consensus if it's something that we can bring back. It has to be brought back really quickly because of the timeline of the demolition of the old city hall. Do you need anything else
Thank you.
from us?
No, I'll work with staff to try to bring it back for next week. So this particular item may not get added to the agenda until Friday. Just given the fact that we already are well underway with mobilizing for the demolition of this building. But I need to spend some time with staff to really have a holistic overview of the different challenges at play in terms of how this building could be utilized. I think it's important to know that the DA's office does not yet have a square footage in mind in terms of size and scale of a facility. They're purely talking about a facility a location. And Brian Mason asked me to serve as a co-chair for that working group. So we'll definitely be able to have a conduit in terms of, regardless of what happens with this conversation, discussion and leadership opportunity moving forward.
Great.
So,
And thank you for stepping up, once again, showing just how much of a leader the city is, and City Manager Geyer's role is it's pretty evident that you're called on to be a leader in
Thank
many
you.
different things. So thank you for that, and I think it's worth mentioning because
You're welcome.
it's super cool, too. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. My question is, I mean, we were looking at the scheduling and all that, but are we gonna need some kind of rehearsal for using the new city hall? I just don't know, I mean, the way it's been kind of like presented is we just.
would you like a
waltz in.
rehearsal?
I think so, I mean, just to, like, and maybe it would be some kind of a tour, but before the first meeting to actually go, do sort of a run-through where
Yeah.
stuff is.
Definitely more than a tour. You'll get that on August 26th. In the next couple weeks, let me wrap my head around what, we have a internal move meeting on Wednesday of this week. We can, we need to do a test run of AV equipment. We also need to provide safety training for the new facility. So I haven't figured out where those pieces fit. So we'll call that the rehearsal or test run, so to speak. But yeah, we can provide space for that.
And if you, have a meeting, a board or a commission that's a smaller group, maybe they could test it in terms of the AV equipment and the recording.
That's a good point as well. Yeah, we'll need to do a educational, provide each board and commission staff liaison education. And so we'll get into more of those details, but that's a really important piece as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, details to be figured out. We're making progress by identifying these two dates, the September 9th date and the September 16th date. And then we'll solidify move-in dates of when we actually close this building, move in, but are closed in that as we're getting unpacked and whatnot. So more to come.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. I didn't want to be jumping the gun, but I was curious.
No, I mean, those are all things we need to figure out. So thanks for asking that question.
Okay, thank you.
That's really great. I love a dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
Speaking of, will there be any kind of ceremony to say goodbye to this old building?
We are working on that, trying to figure out what that looks like. So if you have any ideas, please share them with me. We've got a couple different thoughts. One is we could do a retiring of the gavel or do something more that involves council. I need to do some additional research.
You get to swing a sledgehammer?
I was asked that last week. I was going there. I was asked that now, which is why we need to have the conversation about whether or not this building could be utilized as a temporary FJC, because I don't want you hammering the walls if only to have to repair them. And for a variety of other reasons as well, in terms of, we have to think about whether or not how to do that safely. But yeah, if you think of anything, send it my way. There's no real, this is the way to retire a building, so I want to get creative, and Rachel's doing some thinking around it as well. And
That's great.
yeah, it's exciting.
Put your thinking hats on. It'd be great to see maybe video clips or highlights from each year, each mayor, or something like that. I don't know. It's just one thought. Some of the most exciting meetings, or maybe not. Does anyone else have any questions on that note? No.
Okay, nothing else?
Doesn't look like we have anything else. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
Everyone. Are there any other items for council? Nobody? Great. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.